Welcome back, this is Antman2050. We're playing Dynasty Warriors 9. This is Sunday Shuffle. This is, once again, another kind of impressions of Dynasty. I've had a little bit more time to play with it, and probably if you're watching the series as it comes out, this is going to be released a little bit out of sequence. But I'm learning more with the game, and depending on which monitor I'm on, I actually get a better viewing of it. The one that I'm normally recording on, I can't actually see my I can't actually see the money amount or my stamina bar at all, so that's fun. And I've learned quite a few different things, and so I want to just kind of talk about my impressions with the game and where I've gone from. Because I was pretty dang hyped when we first started this, and as you're watching, you'll probably hear the enthusiasm in my voice drop further and further and further. And actually, you know, there's a lot of people out there. It's not a big surprise that the game is not being well received. If you listen to a few other YouTubers like Jim Sterling, he really lays down all the things that he thinks are wrong with not only Dynasty Warriors 9, but Dynasty Warriors as a series as a whole. I think his rating is a little too extreme. I don't think that this is a completely broken game that has no value. But it definitely doesn't have what I want from a Dynasty Warriors game. And more importantly, or worse, it doesn't have a lot of the elements that I expect from Dynasty Warriors. The biggest ones being base combat. And I think that's one of the things that we'll continue to talk about on this particular set of videos. What I would like to do is really take a minute and talk about what I think they did right and the things I think they did wrong in here, and what they should really look at moving forward in the Dynasty Warrior game series. But let's go ahead and talk about some of the good, bad, and the ugly for Dynasty 9. For me, number one is the combat. By making this grand open world that they've made, they actually... Oh, yep, there's some skittish deer that just let you ride right into them. Anyways, they took away a lot of the planning that went into making carefully designed levels. And instead we get repeated guard towers over and over and over and over. I've actually already taken some of these guard towers before. Once again, it's kind of actually nice to have the bow back, but we don't have any hold for charge. You just hold down the button and you'll fire repeatedly. The energy on the bow is really over the top. So if you're hunting, it makes sense that it would be more effective, but if you just want to stand here and spam it into a crowd, you're actually doing far more damage than you do with your normal weapon. So it's not a bad strategy to actually get on these towers where the archers are that don't really do much, and just fire into your enemy with them. Now granted, once you only have one guard, it is actually really hard to target them, but you do so much more damage, it's ridiculous. And there's no real reason for it. So, the open world didn't work, and it's 90% bad planning. The things that could have been fantastic about an open world Dynasty are completely misused in the actual game. This opened the door to a lot of great explanations for what was actually going on in these battles, but instead it was just used as kind of a, feels like just a cop-out, so they didn't have to actually design the levels again, which is pretty terrible. In the end, that's not the only problem, of course. That's just one of many. You also have the revised combat system, which feels sloppier, less well-maintained than ever did before. And I think we've all resigned to the idea that the weapons that weren't included in the base game are going to show up as DLC. The big thing that I really wonder is who is interested in the DLCs for this? Because I can't bring myself to do it anymore. I thought I might be able to, but I really can't. The combat for it feels incredibly bland, but I think the biggest thing for me that I'll miss when you start Dynasty Warriors, any Dynasty Warriors, with the exception of Dynasty Warriors Real, you start off with 4 hits. 3 triangles, or I'm sorry, 3 boxes, 1 triangle. That's how the charge system had always worked, and you will build up your attacks as you play. So you feel a lot more powerful as your character continues in the story. You start off with the base level hits, and then you move up. The new state system, aside from being, like I said, feeling a lot more lazy, doesn't have any progression at all. You are as powerful in your combinations at level 1 as you will ever be throughout the rest of the game. You're not going to earn any new specials, you're not going to build on your character at all. As soon as you plug in your weapon, that's it. You're going to be doing the exact same combinations from the beginning of the game as you will do all the way through, which is really disheartening, because I've always felt like I grew with the characters because of that time, because of building up those weapon skills. Now granted, when I would finish something, I rarely ever would choose to remove the skills that I'd already gotten and go back to the first few times. But we all knew that you could. The reality is, by taking that away, you've diminished a lot of the early gameplay. You've also diminished a lot of what makes people become so attached to their characters, building those skills in the game. And I really think that's a lot of what people are missing when they're playing this, is that early level build-up that really kind of connects you to those characters. That's why they feel like everybody seems so bland. And it really doesn't help that it almost doesn't matter what weapons you have, because you'll do just as well picking up another weapon. I'm sure there is a difference. I'm sure some characters are better with some weapons and some are not. I haven't experienced that yet, but I haven't really gotten to play around with it that much yet either. But I mean, that's a huge failing. Voice acting, of course, we know is terrible. But the other thing is, the cities were supposed to be this big draw, and they feel exactly the same as they did in any other game.
Our target has been determined.
We haven't had very many cities,
Will deflate their morale.
but we've had them in some of the side games, some of the empires. And they don't feel like there's anything going on in them. So what's the point of even doing anything in the cities? You pretty much just go in, look for your items, and get out. You have no reason to spend any more time than that in a city, which kind of renders the whole idea of the cities useless as well. I finally got a hideout, so we'll see what that's like, I guess. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on it, but sadly, I feel like it's probably not going to be any better than the regular cities. This is another big downside. Combat feels more cluttered than it has in other games as well. And I'm not sure if that's just a new art design, but I always feel like I'm kind of in my own way. The lock-on is nice, but it kind of becomes all-consuming. I spend more time looking for an enemy, hitting lock-on, than I've ever spent just battling my way through the horde, which is another downside. Along with that, the new finishing system, which was pretty neat in Samurai, in Dynasty is totally abused. As you've seen, I've come up against at least 4 of these guys so far, and they've gone down relatively quickly. And most of that isn't so much that I've actually beat them as much as they just fell into being able to use the finishing move on them and immediately knocking them out of the flow of battle. Once again, horse combat is really not worth bothering with, so you just kind of ride the horse, jump off, and do the battle. I know a lot of people have the big complaint right now that it feels like everything is empty, so you just spend a lot of time riding your horse from one spot to another spot. And I can't say that that's a unvalid complaint, because we do spend a lot of time doing that. The other side is like this right here is probably the most interesting of all the encounters. Trying to figure out which one is not a clone. And even this, I just randomly happened to bump. It didn't have any kind of a lead up to it. In fact, actually you saw it while I was doing this. It just kind of is there. And that's a real problem. It's really an issue to have any of your kind of important generals or cutscenes or characters have no pomp or circumstance. It's really an issue.
Ah, so you're the ones that took out Zhang Liang. You are with the Volunteer Corps? It is such a waste.
At least we get a little bit of something here.
Caliber in such a lowly fighting force. Tell me, what is your name? I see. I shall be sure to keep it in mind.
That's very strange.
This uprising is only the start of more fighting to come. I have a feeling our paths will cross again. My name is Cao Cao. You would do well to remember it as well.
This victory was made
By
possible
not giving
your efforts.
Liu Bei any dialogue there, once again, it's another failing. It's already really loose to claim that every character has their own individual story here. But when you have moments where you could have individual story and you choose not to, like we just had, it's kind of a problem. Having Liu Bei and Cao Cao's meeting like that just go without even having your admittedly bad voice acting have anything to do with it, yeah, it's rough. It's rough and it feels completely unpolished. Let's also talk about the map, which is probably the worst start map system I've ever encountered in a Dynasty Warriors game. Putting things on an up and down, slider, and bumpers, and doing L1 and L2 bumpers to kind of figure out how to do things is ridiculous. It's the most unintuitive I've seen in a long time, and it took me a while to figure it out because while I was recording, I didn't spend a lot of time really looking at where it was trying to prompt me for buttons. I just wanted to feel it out. The other end is this upgrade system, which, once again, is the worst in the entire Dynasty system. I don't think I've ever encountered a worse setup for it. The problem is it doesn't feel like any of your decisions matter. And in the end, I can't say that they do. Everything that you do, all of your setups, all of the stats that you put in, feel completely meaningless. I played with Hongai, and if you keep Hongai with his club, which I strongly recommend you get rid of immediately, his stat shows that he has an incredibly high speed, but he plays incredibly slow. When you switch him to another weapon, he of course speeds up, but it has nothing to do with Hungai's stat. It has everything to do with the weapon that he just equipped. And that's one of the other big problems. With Liu Bei here, I'm constantly putting more points. I've actually just started putting all of my points in my attack. But I don't feel any stronger than I did when I first started.
A good example for everyone else.
The level that your character has seems to reflect nothing as well, which is also irritating. Trying to capture bases is irritating in that half the time the guards will not be in the base. They'll actually be wandering around just beyond, so you'd think you've cleared it, but you really haven't. Or you hit one particular guard, and all of a sudden everyone starts running from the base. Now I get it. It's a design mechanic that didn't work properly. The idea was that, you know, you weren't supposed to have lone soldiers that are trying to outweigh the odds, but it turns into kind of just a mess where you have, you know, your one lone general defeat one opposing commander or captain, and you have an entire regiment just running away from the battlefield. It comes off as unbelievable, and it just looks sloppy. Here again, we just barely got into that fight, and within only a second we have a execution. So yeah, there's a lot of things to not like, and I think I'll like I said, I'm going to sit down and really build out each of the different points, but I also want to point out things that I do think they did well. And I mean, in the end, as much as it's not a successful game, and it's definitely not a great or even a really good Dynasty Warriors, it's not so bad that I've decided I'm going to get rid of it yet. I'm still wanting to play it. I still want to put time into it. I still want to see what they've built and see how their generation system is going to work. I still want to be able to see what these endings are going to be. But as half-hearted and as generic as they are with a lot of this, I almost now think that my worries of the endings being different characters dancing by a bonfire is almost exactly what they were going for. But yeah, there's a lot of things that they just could have done better, and it's just sad to see that the one thing that they seem to really work the most on was this open world. And I feel it's like the weakest part of the entire game. Because the things that they could have done versus the things they did do is ridiculous. And I think if they had erred on the side of really putting too much content in the game, we would have been a lot happier than what we are now. The other downside is, like, you look at the only important quest for the beginning here: suppress the yellow turbans, go and do the final battle, and that's it. It's the only thing it wants to send you on. All of these other ones are optional, and you have to dig around to find them. Now the nice thing is, once you've figured out what each one is, it'll pop up on each of your subsequent playthroughs. The downside is, there's nothing to motivate you to do any of these. They don't go out of their way to show you what the road is that they want you to experience as this army. And I don't know if that was because they wanted to let you have a more open world adventure or what. But it comes off as very halfway. I was planning to just go crush the Yellow Turbans with Leo Bay right off the bat, and I kind of got caught up in the idea that I wanted Guan Yu and Zhang Fei to come with me. I have absolutely no idea what actually motivated them to leave one of the spots in the middle of the map like they are now to actually be at the end step of the game, because they stopped following me and just kind of took up a holding pattern. Now, some of that's probably because I just didn't spend enough time really seeing what their little mission was supposed to be, but it's so unintuitive that you just don't get a chance to experience it without having to really do extra homework, and you shouldn't be doing that. There should be a baseline of things that they want you to achieve as you play, that you shouldn't have to look to find. They should be giving you the basics as a part of your own game. And then the extra stuff can be things that you go off and do on your own. Like, and I know I'm butchering his name, but I have Yui Jin following me at this point. We went and rescued him. And since he doesn't wind up perishing in the Yellow Terran's rebellion, he now follows me around and tries to shadow me. That's a cool extra. But it feels like it's one of the very few extras that was done even halfway well. And I mean, you look at the rest of this stuff, shouldn't it be prompting you to go and stop some of these things? It doesn't. So I would say if I was going to rate Dynasty 1 out of 10 for Dynasty 9, I'd have to say it was a 4. It's not a terrible game. It's not the worst game ever made. It's a bad Dynasty game. I would say it's one of the bottom. And to tell you the truth, if this was the beginning of a new Muso game series, I would probably feel differently about it. But this doesn't feel like part 9. This feels like part 1 or part 3, where they decided they wanted to try to be more ambitious and change up all of their preconceived setups. And like Sterling says, what's really wrong with this game isn't that they tried to be too ambitious with this open world. It was that they just did the open world and thought that'll be enough. We don't really need to invest in anything else. And it really feels like it. We see weird innovations in extra horse run, or the fantastic auto run system, which everyone is complaining about, because the auto run has no baseline at all. It tries to GPS by your map without any kind of thought as to what the terrain is. And so in doing so, it actually renders its own use basically useless. If you just throw on auto run, if you are on a established road, it will auto run on that road, but it'll run you into every single obstacle that's in its way. It doesn't map around them. And if you're out in the woods like I was just a moment ago, it'll take whatever path it can possibly take to get you to an established road as fast as possible, even if that means going backwards. So it really does render a lot of its own setups useless. I see they're still hanging out back here. I thought they were actually over here doing something, but I was mistaken. Either way, I think if this is your first Dynasty, it's probably not going to be a big disappointment to you. It does have some of the feel that Dynasty Warriors has given us. If you are a longtime fan, this doesn't feel like Dynasty Warriors 9. It feels like Dynasty Warriors 2. Or Dynasty Warriors 3. And I don't mean that it feels like those games, because those games were amazing. I mean it feels like we're just figuring out how to do this game. It feels like they haven't been able to decide the very fundamental core aspects of Dynasty, which is a problem when you hit your 9th iteration. Alright, this has been a bit longer than I meant it to be for not really saying a whole lot. Keep tuned. The next things I really want to do with this part of the channel is to really talk about how I think they could improve, and the things that I really wish they would have done from the start this time. But until then, this is Antman2050. Play games, have fun, be aware, and we'll catch you all next time.